The call came on a quiet Tuesday morning while Clara was buried in fabric swatches for a new client's living room. Her phone buzzed just as she was choosing between sage green and dusty blue. "Grandma May passed away this morning," the voice said flatly. Clara froze. The scissors slipped from her fingers onto the hardwood floor. For a moment she couldn't move. At 24, Clara thought she understood loss. He didn't. Not this kind. Not the kind that ripped the air from your lungs. Grandma May had been the one person who made her feel like she belonged, like she mattered. Without thinking, she packed a small bag and got in the car. The 3-hour drive back to her hometown blurred by, her hands tight on the wheel. Every exit sign, every familiar landmark made her heart squeeze harder. When she pulled up to the little yellow house on Maple Lane, she expected warmth. Instead, she found silence and Diane, her mother, standing in front of the funeral home like someone reporting a delayed bus. "She went peacefully," Diane said, eyes dry, voice flat. Clara waited for a hug. It never came. Her brother Jacob stood beside her, thumbing through his phone. "Hey," he muttered without looking up. Then back to his screen. Grandma May was gone. And no one seemed to feel it but her. "Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more." The service was short, quiet. Clara watched as casseroles were dropped off and polite neighbors murmured condolences before disappearing. When the last car left the driveway, she finally asked the question that had been sitting on her chest. "Can we talk about the house?" she said softly, standing in the kitchen where ceramic roosters still lined the windowsill and the smell of lavender dish soap clung to the air. Diane barely glanced up from the box she was filling with mugs. "What about it?" "I want to keep it," Clara blurted. "I know it needs work, but I've saved up and I could—" "Clara," Diane cut her off with that same cold tone that used to freeze her as a child. "Be realistic. This house is worth money. Real money. We need to be practical." "I am being practical," Clara said quickly. "I want to buy it from the estate." Jacob looked up, then snorted and said, "With what?" "Your waitress tips." Heat rushed to Clara's face. "I have a degree in interior design. I'm starting my own business." Diane arched an eyebrow. "Starting?" "Jacob has a family to support. 2 kids, a mortgage, real responsibilities." Clara stared at her mother, wondering how love could feel so conditional. Clara stayed quiet for the rest of the evening. Even as Diane wrapped up Grandma's favorite coffee mug and shoved it in a box labeled kitchen, Clara kept her mouth shut. But her heart screamed. That yellow house wasn't just a building. It was the only place she had ever felt seen. The next few weeks were a blur. Clara returned to her city job but couldn't focus. One afternoon, while scrolling through Facebook during her lunch break, she saw it. A post from her childhood neighbor, Paige. It was a photo. Clara's breath caught in her throat. There it was, a bright red for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn of Grandma May's house. Felt like a knife. She called Diane instantly. "Why didn't you tell me the house was listed?" Diane sounded annoyed. "Russell handled everything. Jacob's old friend, remember? He's in real estate now. Got us a great price." Clara's voice shook. "You didn't even tell me?" "I didn't want to upset you unnecessarily," Diane replied. "It sold for $150,000. Can you believe it? For that little old house." Clara could believe it. She had run the numbers 100 times. Dreamed of restoring every inch of it. "Where's the money going?" she asked quietly. Diane replied without missing a beat. "To Jacob. For the kids' college. And he's been talking about getting a boat." "A boat?" Clara whispered. She stared blankly at her phone. "What about me?" Diane sighed loudly, like Clara was asking for candy at the checkout line. "You're single. You don't have a family to support. Jacob's under a lot of pressure. You wouldn't understand." Clara sat alone in her tiny apartment that night, the words echoing in her head. Her eyes burned. Her chest ached. The next day she drove back to Maple Lane. The house was already empty. Lights off. Windows bare. It didn't feel like home anymore. She walked around to the backyard where the old oak tree still stood tall and tired. There, carved into the bark, were faded letters. C+Gray forever. She had carved them when she was 8, believing in things like love and forever. Clara pressed her palm to the bark. "Someday," she whispered, "I'll be back for you." She stayed until the sky turned dark and the crickets started to sing. That night she made a decision. She would stop begging to be chosen. If no one would give her space to belong, she'd carve one out for herself. Clara waited 2 days before confronting them. 2 days of no sleep, of calling in sick to work, of imagining every word she wanted to say. On Saturday morning she pulled into Jacob's driveway. Her mother's car was parked beside a gleaming white boat trailer. The boat sat there like a trophy. Clara walked to the door and knocked. Jacob answered wearing a fishing vest and a smug smile. "Clara," he grinned. "Come see the new baby." He gestured toward the boat like it was a newborn. 22 feet of freedom. "We need to talk," Clara said firmly. "About what?" Diane appeared behind him, sipping coffee from Grandma's old mug. Clara stared at it stunned. "About the house. About the money. About how no one included me in any of the decisions." Jacob's grin faded. "Include you in what? It wasn't your house." "I asked for it," Clara said. "You asked for something that wasn't realistic," Diane snapped. "We had to think about the family." Clara clenched her fists. "I am family." "Of course, honey," Diane replied, but her voice was cold. "But Jacob has responsibilities." Clara felt something shift inside her. She wasn't 8 years old anymore. Clara looked her brother in the eyes for the first time in years. At 34, Jacob still had that same smug expression he'd worn as a teenager when he took her things without asking. "Where are your kids right now?" she asked. Jacob's face twitched. "With their mother. It's her weekend." "So, you bought a boat for family trips," Clara said slowly, "but the kids don't live with you?" Diane frowned. "That's temporary. Calvin's just being difficult about custody." "Maybe because someone hasn't paid child support in 3 months?" she added not so quietly. "Mom." Jacob snapped. "What?" "It's true," Diane shrugged. "That's why he needed the money. He's trying to catch up." Claire took a step back stunned. "So Grandma May's house paid for your boat and your unpaid child support?" she asked. "It paid for Jacob's future," Diane said sharply. "Something you clearly don't understand." Clara's voice was a whisper. "I put Grandma first. Every holiday, every summer when you were too busy with Jacob's soccer games, I was there." Diane's jaw tightened. "That was your choice." "No," Clara said. "It was the only way I got to feel like someone wanted me around." Diane's face turned pale, then flushed with anger. "How dare you," she hissed. "I've always supported you." Clara's voice didn't rise, but her hands trembled. "Like when you forgot my graduation. Or when you skipped college orientation because Jacob had a hangover and needed a ride." Jacob rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. It's just a house." Clara looked at him, then at Diane. "It wasn't just a house to me." Diane crossed her arms. "You put too much meaning into everything. Places, people, memories. You always have." A silence settled in the room like a fog. Clara stood straighter. "You're right," she said softly. "I do. I thought my family would at least try to care about how I felt." She exhaled deeply. "I'm moving." The words slipped out before she even realized she meant them. Diane blinked. "Moving? Where?" "Somewhere else. Anywhere but here. I'm done pretending this works." Jacob scoffed. "You're overreacting. It's not like we can refund the money. It's gone." Clara shook her head. "I'm not asking for money." Jacob narrowed his eyes. "Then what do you want?" For a second, Clara imagined every dramatic move she could make. Throwing the coffee mug, slashing the boat tires, screaming. But instead she turned toward the door. "I want peace," she said. "I want to stop explaining myself to people who never listened." Diane reached out as Clara opened the door. "Don't be like this. We're family. We love you." Clara stopped and turned slowly. They were both standing there, mother and son, looking more annoyed than remorseful, as if she were the one causing the problem. "No," Clara said. "You love the version of me who never asks for anything. Who stays quiet and convenient." She walked to her car without another word. Her hands shook as she gripped the wheel. She didn't cry this time. Not until she got home. But that night something changed. She pulled out her laptop and started searching for cities where interior designers could thrive, places where nobody knew her name, her family, or her story. She'd start over. Build something real. Something hers. 7 years passed in a blur of hard work, missed birthdays, and sleepless nights. Clara moved to Austin with 3 suitcases and a need to prove everyone wrong. The first year was brutal. She waitressed at night, interned at a design firm during the day, and slept on an air mattress in a studio apartment that smelled like cat pee. She was running on fumes in spite. One morning she stumbled into work bleary-eyed, where a woman named Erin waved a coffee in her face. "You look like hell," Erin said. "Gee thanks," Clara muttered. "When's the last time you took a day off?" Clara shrugged. She couldn't afford to take one. "You're running on fumes and gas station coffee," Erin added. She wasn't wrong. Then Erin leaned in. "I've been thinking about starting a staging company." "You in?" Clara blinked. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I've got clients. You've got talent. Let's make something big." It was reckless. It was risky. It was exactly what Clara needed. 3 months later, they opened an office in a converted warehouse with no AC but a whole lot of hope. They called it Clara and Erin Interiors, even though it was just the two of them. "Fake it till you make it," Erin said, tapping the shiny new business cards. Clara grinned. Their first year was slow. Tiny clients, low budgets, long hours. But then came the big one. A Hollywood actor needed his mansion staged before listing. "He requested you," Erin said, waving the contract like a golden ticket. The house looked like a nightclub exploded inside a warehouse. All black leather and chrome. "We can fix it," Clara said, rolling up her sleeves. For 3 weeks they worked nonstop. Clara maxed out 2 credit cards for furniture and decor. They finished staging the night before the shoot, at 2 a.m., collapsing on the sofa they just styled. "Think it'll work?" Erin asked, eyes half closed. Clara smiled. "It has to." The house sold in 4 days, for $2 million over asking. "We did it," Erin whispered, staring at the check. "We really did it." And just like that, Clara's dream had its foundation. Success came faster than they dreamed. Within 2 years, Clara and Erin Interiors had a 12-person team and a waiting list of clients. But even as Clara designed homes for celebrities and staged million-dollar properties, she couldn't let go of one address, 1247 Maple Lane. She had Google alerts set. She checked property records like a ritual. On rare visits to her hometown, she drove by quietly, never stopping. The yellow paint had faded. The porch sagged. The lawn was always overgrown. "You're torturing yourself," said Paige, her old neighbor, during a call one night. "That house isn't a home anymore." "I just want to know it's okay," Clara said. "Well, it's not. It's been empty for years. The buyers never moved in." Clara's stomach twisted. "Jacob's boat? Still running?" "Sold it. Heard he needed money for legal stuff. Messy divorce. Calvin took him to court." Clara felt a flicker of satisfaction, then shame for feeling it. "And you? Still conquering Austin?" Paige asked. Clara laughed softly. "Something like that." Then one Thursday morning, Clara's Google alert dinged. Foreclosure auction. Opening bid, $85,000. Her heart pounded. "Erin," she called from her office. "Cancel my week." "What? Why?" Clara printed the notice and held it up. "I'm going home." A week later, she stood across the street from the courthouse, watching a crowd gather. Contractors, investors, curious neighbors. She sat in her BMW, designer sunglasses shielding her face, tailored blazer crisp. Not one person recognized her. Until Russell, Jacob's old friend, stepped forward to announce the auction. He'd aged, balding now but still arrogant. 1247 Maple Lane, he read, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Built in 1952. The bidding started at 85. Contractors raised hands. The numbers climbed. 100, 120, 140. At 160 it stalled. Clara stepped forward. $200,000, she said clearly. Silence fell. Heads turned. Russell's mouth fell open. "Do I hear 210? No one replied. The gavel dropped. Sold to bidder 47. Clara walked up, signed the papers with steady hands and smiled. "Scarlett?" Russell asked, squinting. "I mean, Clara?" "Hello, Russell. Wow, you look different." "Success will do that. You moved to Austin, right? Interior design." "Something like that," Clara said, slipping the deed into her purse. "Thanks for selling me the house again. Worked out great. Russell looked confused, but she didn't stick around to explain. The drive to Maple Lane took 5 minutes. The house looked worse up close. Beige where yellow had once glowed. The porch leaned like it had given up. The oak tree in the backyard still stood tall, though its swing was gone. Clara walked around to it and found the old carving. C+ gray forever. She traced it with her fingers and whispered, "I kept my promise." Her phone buzzed. "Aaron. How did it go?" she texted. Clara replied, "I'm home." Renovations began immediately. Clara hired the best contractor in the state. Price didn't matter. 3 months later, the house looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. Every room glowed with warmth and style. "This looks like magic," Aaron said during a walkthrough. In the dining room, a massive slab of oak sat at the center of the table. From the old tree in the backyard, partially damaged in a storm. She had the carving preserved under glass, C+ gray forever. But she'd added a new inscription, "For the chosen child." "Think they'll get the message?" Aaron asked. "They'll get it," Clara replied. Invitations were sent under company letterhead. Howard Interiors cordially invites you to the grand reopening of a restored 1952 Craftsman home. Clara sent them to everyone in town, including Diane and Jacob. The address was listed in tiny print at the bottom. Guests arrived dressed to impress. Old neighbors, local press, clients. Paige helped welcome people. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she whispered, squeezing Clara's hand. At exactly 7:30, Diane's car pulled up. Jacob stepped out in a blazer and tie. Clara watched them through the security monitor as they walked inside, sipping champagne, admiring the crown molding. "This is gorgeous," Diane said to another guest. "Do you know who owns it now?" "Some design company," the woman replied. "From Austin." At 8:15 they entered the dining room. Clara waited, eyes fixed on the screen. Diane froze. Her gaze locked on the oak centerpiece. Jacob leaned closer, reading the words aloud. "For the chosen child." "What does that mean?" he whispered. Clara stepped into the room. "Welcome home." The room went silent. Champagne flutes stilled midair. Diane's hand trembled. "Clara," she whispered. "Hello, Mom." "Jacob." Clara stood tall, composed, dressed in black. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you'd recognize the address." "What is this?" Jacob demanded. "What are you doing here?" "I live here now. I own it. Bought it at foreclosure for $200,000. Diane blinked. "That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money." Clara smiled. "Turns out I do." "You bought Grandma's house?" Jacob asked. "Why?" "Because it was the only thing I ever asked for." Guests politely excused themselves. Aaron hovered in the kitchen, ready to step in. Jacob was pacing now. "You bought a house out of spite." "I bought it because it was for sale," Clara said calmly. "The first time you used it to buy a boat. This time I paid in cash." "How much did you put into it?" Jacob asked. $200 for the auction. $300 in renovations. Clara folded her arms. $500,000 if you're counting." "That's insane," Diane said. "You were a waitress." Clara corrected. "Now I own a design firm. We stage celebrity homes. Last month we closed a $12 million sale." Jacob opened his phone. "You're lying." He typed her name, then fell silent. "Oh my, language," Diane scolded automatically, but she looked shaken too. "There's more," Clara said. "This isn't just my home. It's the new headquarters for our nonprofit. A housing center." "For who?" Jacob asked. "For women like your ex-wife," Clara said. "Calvin," he croaked. "She applied last week." Diane gasped. She recognized the address from the renovation news. "Small world, right?" "You're doing this to punish us," Diane said. Clara shook her head. "I'm doing this to help women who've been discarded, abandoned, told they don't matter." "Sound familiar?" Diane's face twisted. "You're twisting my words. You told me I'd never understand responsibility. Because I was single. Because I didn't have kids." Jacob was still scrolling. "Your company's worth millions," he muttered. "And you're throwing it away for this?" Clara laughed softly. "I'm expanding. We're launching a nonprofit branch. Women who live here will learn skills, financial planning, self-worth. We didn't write you off, Diane whispered. You sold my inheritance for a boat, Clara snapped. It wasn't yours. Then what was I to her? What was I to you? Diane's voice cracked. You were strong. You didn't need me. Clara blinked. I was 8 when Dad left. I needed you. And you had your grandmother, Diane whispered. Because you gave me to her. The truth hit like thunder. Even Jacob looked stunned. She loved you better than I ever knew how, Diane admitted. Clara said nothing. Her chest ached. Her hands trembled. I chose the one who needed me, Diane said, glancing at Jacob, instead of the one who loved me. You chose wrong, Clara whispered. And you can't fix it. But I can stop making it worse, Diane finished softly. A month later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony brought tears to everyone's eyes. The mayor spoke. Local press covered it. Calvin held one end of the ribbon, her children beside her. Ready? Clara asked. Calvin nodded. The red ribbon fluttered to the ground. A sign was revealed. Rose Place. Transitional housing for women and families. Your grandmother would be proud, Paige whispered. Clara smiled through tears. I hope so. Diane and Jacob never showed despite receiving invitations. Their silence said enough. A reporter interviewed Clara. You're funding this alone? For now, Clara said. But we're applying for grants. Calvin is our first resident and also our house manager. After the event, Clara and Paige sat on the porch swing Clara had installed to replace Grandma's old glider. How does it feel? Paige asked. Strange. Good. Worth it. Clara chuckled. $500,000 for a house I could have had for free 7 years ago. But you weren't ready then, Paige said. Clara nodded. That girl was angry and heartbroken. This woman is healed and building something that matters. I heard Jacob entered gambling treatment, Paige said. And he's trying to see his kids again. Clara looked down. That's up to Calvin. And your mom. She called. Twice. I didn't answer. Paige placed her hand over Clara's. You don't have to decide anything yet. I know, Clara said softly. A beat-up Honda pulled to the curb. A woman stepped out holding her child's hand. Clara smiled. That's Maria. Our second resident. Maria approached nervously. Miss Clara? I just wanted to say thank you again. This place, it means everything. Clara nodded. That's what it's for. After they left, Paige turned. You're changing lives. Clara looked toward the oak tree in the backyard. Grandma always said love is what you give, not what you're given. They went inside where the house was glowing. The warmth wasn't just in the lights or decor. It was in the laughter. The calm. The safety. As the sun dipped below the trees, Clara pulled out Grandma's old recipe box. Pot roast tonight, she told Paige. Her recipe? Word for word. Paige smiled. I'll stay. They cooked together in the kitchen where Clara once helped Grandma May wash dishes. The butcher block counters gleamed. The vintage lights cast a golden glow. Everything felt right. When dinner was done, Clara set the table with Grandma's restored china. A knock came at the door, Aaron dropping by with wine. This is home, Aaron said. Clara smiled. Yeah. It really is. Later Clara stood alone on the porch. The oak tree swayed gently. She felt the weight of 7 years finally lift. She had kept her promise. Not just to the house but to herself. She didn't just reclaim her past. She built a future. Her phone buzzed. A message from Diane. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry it took me too long to say it. Clara didn't reply, not yet. But she didn't delete it either. Some wounds take time. Some bridges aren't rebuilt overnight. But the door wasn't locked. Inside, Paige and Aaron were laughing in the kitchen. The house was full of light, warmth, and love again. Not because it had been inherited, but because it had been rebuilt. Clara knew she didn't need anyone's permission to belong anymore. She had chosen herself. And that made all the difference. As she tucked the photo of her and Grandma May into the hallway frame, she smiled. She hadn't just taken back a house. She'd taken back her voice, her value, her legacy. Moral lesson. Family isn't defined by blood or inheritance. It's built by the people who show up, believe in you, and choose to love you without condition. Remember to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more of this.